Today's episode is episode 180, and today I'm joined by Ciara Gerathy. Ciara is a best-selling author. She's got at least 9 books published, 9 that I've counted anyway. I've read her most recent 2 books, Rules of the Road and Make Yourself at Home. I thoroughly enjoyed them. They touch on some sensitive topics, especially Rules of the Road. I liked how Ciara wrote a story around these topics and was brave enough to have a story around it, and just helped me to learn things through the characters, to be honest. On today's episode, we talk about how Ciara became a writer. She started relatively later on in life. Well, not that late on in life, but relatively late on in life. Talk about what writing is for her, what it's given to her. And we talk about Make Yourself at Home. We talk about the what went into the book, how did she come up with the story, some of the psychology behind the book, what she wanted to talk about and what she wanted to express. So I thoroughly enjoyed talking to Ciara. She's a very open person, and I know you'll get some value from this episode. So thanks again for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Okay, so thanks for joining us today, Ciara.
Thank you very much for having me, Dennis.
My pleasure. Uh, yeah, just if you could just tell us a little bit about you to begin with.
Okay, right. That's a very broad question. My
Indeed.
name is Ciara Gerathy. I am a writer, but I only became a writer when I was 34. And up until then, I was an insurance loss adjuster. I was loads of different things actually, but one of the last thing I was before I became an official writer was an insurance loss adjuster. So I I lived in the suburbs. I had two of my 3 children by then, and I worked away. I was working full time. Life was really, really busy, and I didn't have an awful lot of time to think about, what it was I really wanted from my life. And you don't when you have small children. And then one day I was standing on the train platform in Donabate and waiting for the train. The train was late, so which gave me kind of a rare 5 minutes of self-reflection, and I realized that I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And, that was worrying since I already was grown up. And I kind of mooched around for a couple of weeks after that, and I felt really down, and I was like, God, I didn't, when I was 5 years old, didn't dream about being an insurance loss adjuster. And like, there was nothing wrong with my job, and it could be quite interesting at times. And my boss always told me my report writing was really, really good. But it wasn't like lighting a fire inside me. And I don't know. I just thought my life would be different to how it
Fair
turned
enough.
out, you know. So what happened was, in the course of my work as an insurance loss adjuster, I had to go and investigate a claim in Plunkett College in Whitehall. A man had fallen off a roof. Don't worry, he was fine. But I just had to go and investigate that incident. And in the course of my investigation, I spoke to the principal of the school there, and he was telling me all about his adult education program. And he gave me a syllabus, and it was just that kind of time of the year when people sort of coming into late summer, coming into the autumn, when such courses are starting. So it was all kind of it seemed like the universe was telling me something. So, and I just thought, wouldn't it be nice to do a night class once a week for an hour a week? And that was completely unrelated to anything in my life, unrelated to being a mother, a wife, an insurance, worker, and was just kind of a bit frivolous and just something for me. And so that's how I ended up signing up for the creative writing course. And in fairness, like, I probably would have done any kind of course. I don't think I was all that fussy, but I did know I wanted to do something creative, you know. But I was thinking about maybe learning a language, or maybe taking up pottery. It's something creative. And then I saw the creative writing course, and I don't know why, to this day I just don't know why I picked it, but I did, and I signed up for it. And really, the rest is history, because within 5 minutes of being in that class, even though I didn't know anybody, I was on my own, I was hungry, it was dark, it was wet, I'd come from a long day at work, and I was trying to persuade myself, I was trying to come up with excuses as to why I didn't have to go. And then I'm like, but I signed up, and the recovering Catholic in me, the guilt would be too much. I'd already paid the money. So anyway, I went, and literally, yeah, it was definitely a light bulb moment for me. Within 5 minutes, I knew that this course was going to change my life. And it really did. I know that sounds kind of crazy to say, but that is true. And I just got really lucky, because the teacher of the course, Emma Sweeney, she just happened to be one of those brilliant teachers. She was also a writer. And it's very rare that you get a person that can do both of those really well. And I was just incredibly lucky that she was such a person. And she was very gentle with all of us. But she genuinely made me believe that I could be a published writer. And when I started off in the course, like, I literally didn't know any writers, didn't, in that, none of my friends wrote. I didn't know any published writers, or published or otherwise writers, any writers at all. And so you kind of feel like, who the hell am I to think that I can do this? But Emma made it okay for me to feel that, and that's so, so important, because I think if I'd had a different kind of a teacher, a more abrasive one, or just one that wasn't quite as gentle and lovely as she was, I may very well have thrown in the towel. Who knows? Because when you're just starting out in writing, it's all about your confidence, and it's all about allowing yourself and giving yourself permission to sit at the desk and produce work. Because you've always got the angel and the devil on your two shoulders, but it's always the devil's voice who's going to shout the loudest,
Mm.
and the one that you will believe, telling you, look, who do you think you are? You can't write. What are you doing here? You didn't do English in university or anything. Um, so I don't know, Emma, the teacher, just made it okay for me to call myself a writer and to write. And I was just incredibly blessed to have gone to that particular course.
Were, were you ever drawn to writing before that point in time? Like when you were younger, do you remember feelings of being drawn to writing, or was this just something different, or what was it?
No, never drawn to writing. It was
Yeah.
way too much like hard work.
Yeah.
And I remember getting essays in secondary school to do over the weekend, and absolutely hating it
Yeah.
because
I would
it
the
took
same.
so long.
Mm. It's a chore.
Yeah, like I prefer maths homework. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because at least, like, it's just a couple of lines, you're done. I always wanted to be done, 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 and out. That was my main objective when I was a student. So no, I never, but I was always a big reader. And I
Okay.
definitely think that provided the basis for my sort of education as a writer. Because my mother encouraged me to read from a very early age. My dad used to bring me to the library every week. Um, Reading was a big thing in our house, and I'm so grateful for that, because the more, like, you can't be a writer unless you read. I'm firmly convinced of that. Um, so yeah, it gave me a massive basis in understanding structure and narrative and setting and dialogue. And you don't realize when you're reading things that you're actually taking it all in. You just think you're reading this amazing story written by this wonderful writer. And isn't that lovely? And you're just doing it for pure pleasure.
Mm.
But obviously, it snags. If you do it over and over again and you do enough of it, information snags on your subconscious. So that when I went to the blank page to write my first novel, um, I could do it. I knew how to do it. I was as amazed as anyone else.
What's your, have you a general process today in writing a novel? Like how do you go about doing it? Do you write it from start to finish, or do you see the chapters first? Is there a general process that you do for each book, or is it different each time?
There is a general process, I suppose, in that I normally write it from beginning to end, kind of loosely enough.
Mm.
Um, but I mean, it's sort of a long drawn out process. I tend to edit as I go. So I'll write, you know, whatever, maybe 1,500 words on a Monday. And then Tuesday morning, I will revisit what I've written and edit that, and then hopefully write another, in and around 1,500 to 1,000. It depends from day to day. But I try, sometimes I will have like spreadsheets and, notes, and I'll do research and that. But every day I try to have a group of words written down on the page, as well as doing the other stuff, because I find that um it's the writing that's the hard bit. So
Mm.
you can distract yourself with lots of other things that are related to the writing, in terms of research and character development, and you can talk to people on the phone about setting, and you can, there's lots of things you can do to help with the writing of the novel. But the hard bit, the hard work, is the actual getting the words on the page. So I try and be very disciplined about that, and to get words down on the page, even if it's not going to be any good, because it just helps me to feel better in my head. And I
Mm.
find once I feel better in my head, the work gets done in a more productive way. And I also think you're better off to have, like, the blank screen is really frightening and scary. So just fill it up with words, and then you can always come back to edit it. And editing a piece of work is a lot easier, in my opinion, than creating it from scratch.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's like a backbone. It is. It's like anything. It's like the implementation part. It's easy to passively read, but to actually write and express something is the difficult part.
It's so hard. And I know one creative writing teacher I had said, no text, no talk. So if you don't, you could, because us writers, we can talk. If you get a group of writers in a room, they can talk about their work in progress forever, for hours. And we love it. We
Mm.
absolutely love it. And then, at the end of the day, like, where is your work?
Nothing's done.
It's not down on the page. If it's not down on the page, it's not actually happening.
Mm.
So, and that is the hard one. It's the hardest bit of the process, is getting your arse into the seat and turning on the monitor and putting your hand, setting your fingers against the keys and taking that breath, and then making yourself go for it. And I find, and it's always the same. It's directing myself to that, is the hard bit. And then once I'm in the chair, yes, you might sit there for an hour. Yes, nothing might occur. Yes, you might entertain really negative thoughts about yourself.
Mm.
But in the end, you'll end up writing something if you sit there long enough, because even boredom will just take over, and you're like, dear God, how long am I going to sit here for? Just write anything, write something. And I find once you get going, I'm very lucky because I did a secretarial course after I left school. So I'm a really, really fast typist. So I can actually outrun my inner critic with my typing. It's so fast. So once I get going on that, then I'm away. And then what I love about it is, if you're having a good writing day, like, the time will pass, you won't even be aware of it. Roddy Doyle, I remember listening to him in an interview, and he said he knows it's a good writing day if he puts a CD on. This was obviously a very long time ago, and CDs were still a thing. Um, and he knows it's a good writing day if he looks up from his writing and the CD has finished ages ago, and he didn't even notice that the music, that he wasn't listening to the music. So yeah, so I definitely think, getting yourself in the chair, the hardest bit, and staying there even harder. But then once the process starts, oh, it's so lovely. You literally feel like you're just being lifted by something that's, I don't know what it is, but and it happens very rarely now. I mean, often it's just a one word in front of the other, and it's hard. You're like a bricky, really, you know, building with block. It can be that, or feel that difficult. But when it's going well, it's like as if, you've just grown a pair of wings on your back, and you're just lifted off into the air, and you're kind of almost not really aware of it. And that's when it's good.
You feel like you're I suppose maybe expressing things that you mightn't like be able to express otherwise without that channel. You think maybe that's
I
where the
definitely think
freeness
that's
comes from.
true. I definitely think that's true. And I think, like, even if you have no intention of becoming a writer, I think actually the process of writing things down out of your head onto the page is incredibly good for your mental health. They really, really do. And I find when I'm blue or a bit down or something,
Hmm.
it's, you know, it's because when I think about it, I haven't actually written something down for
You're feeling
ages.
about it. Because I was
Yes.
going to say, like writing is kind of like a form of mindfulness because you're becoming aware of the thoughts in your head that are distracting you from your writing. The level of
Yeah.
self-awareness that needs to be there for you to do the work. So in a way, it's like a form of mindfulness. And I think it also gives you a purpose to feel those like challenging feelings of more depression and heavy feelings that would otherwise kind of just sit there and you don't want to feel them and you want to repress them and stay away from them. I think
Yeah.
writing gives you an opportunity to express them, explore them.
I totally agree with you. And also because I write fiction, you know, it's not you. You're not expressing these things. Your
Yeah,
character is
that's
doing
it.
all the so you've got that sort of that security blanket as well. You know, so you can explore, you know, issues and feelings and emotions. But you're in a safe place as a writer because you're making all, you know, all your characters up. And so you can explore it in a kind of a safe way.
I
But
heard an actress talk about that recently.
yeah,
What's her name? She's a French actress, Audrey Fleurot, and she said that like it gives you an opportunity to portray a character that might be very different to you. That in society, the average person wouldn't get the opportunity to express themselves in a certain way, embody a certain way of being, and acting is very freeing that way.
I totally agree with that. And Kevin Barry, who is our wonderful short story writer, even though he writes novels as well, but he says that the closest, sort of in the art world, the closest to the writer is probably the actor. And
Mm.
he says he's a frustrated actor because he would have loved to have been an actor so that he became a writer because he couldn't be an actor. But I do agree with that because you're just taking a character, and you might have absolutely nothing in common with this character. You mightn't agree with his or her ideology and, you know, outlook
Mm.
on the world, but it's interesting to sort of inhabit that character's life for a while, and it does. And I think you definitely need empathy when you are going to write people, and fiction. You certainly need empathy, because you have to be able to inhabit a character's head, and like not all your characters have to be likable, but you have to, you know them. I suppose you have to sort of be interested enough to explore their mindset, you know, and you have to make them real, and I guess, yeah, that's a form of acting, you know.
Actually, like when I was reading your latest book, Coming Home, Marianne, like on the surface, I'm very different to Marianne, but there was very similar ways of her being and similar emotions that she would have to me that I could relate to then. And I'm like, well, that makes sense of maybe why I'm like that. And uh, that's kind of the way I suppose I look at it then. It's like it's giving me a character that's very different to me, but I can relate on a feeling level. Like the stuff they're struggling with is very similar to the stuff I'm struggling with, but I don't fully understand the stuff I'm struggling with. So it's giving me a perspective that could help me maybe understand why I'm struggling with something.
And I mean, and that's a lovely thing to say. I actually take that as a great compliment. And I love that about being a fiction reader as well. It's identifying a character and saying, oh yeah, I get that character, and you know, I empathize with that character, and I see myself in
Mm.
that character, which makes you feel so much less alone. You know, it's such a lovely feeling, you know, and even though it's a fictional character, it can be a really strong, authentic emotion that you feel, a connection to this character, because it sort of justifies maybe how you feel about something, or it just makes you feel seen, that you know, that you can identify with how this character views the world, you know, and there's something so comforting about that. I love that about reading, and when you say that, me as a writer, I find that's a lovely, lovely thing to say, and I take that as a massive compliment. So
Yeah,
thank you.
no, I really enjoyed it. And like even that Coming Home book, it kind of again it solidified that there's a group called the Get Well Sooners. I like that too, that there was like a different word to AA. There was like I feel like when it comes to recovering from things and getting to know yourself, I think it's really about using your own language, finding your own way, using like methodologies that are useful, but then trying to make it your own. And I like that little twist that they were called the Get Well Sooners rather than AA or something
Yeah.
like that.
Well,
And
that was the whole, I mean, the novel, yeah. So, I mean, so plot summary very quickly.
mm,
The Make Yourself at Home is the main character is Marianne Cross, and she is an accountant, or she was an accountant, and she was married, but due to a series of unfortunate incidents, she finds herself homeless, jobless. Her husband has left her. He's gone off to have babies with this younger woman. He and Marianne always agreed that they would never have children, and now he's expecting twins. So Marianne loses her house. She can't pay the mortgage because she's lost her job, so that goes into arrears, and then her house gets repossessed by the bank. So basically, when we meet Marianne at first, she has no other choice but to return to her childhood home, which is called Ankara, which is the Irish word for anchor, set in the wilds of North County Dublin, and this ramshackle falling down ruin of a house perched on the edge of a rain-sodden cliff, which is actually Loch Shinny, which is up the coast from me here. But that's the setting for the novel. So in the house lives Rita, who is Marianne's mother. They never got on. Marianne was 15 when she left home. She went to boarding school first, then she went to Queen's University where she did accountancy. Then she returned to Dublin and she got a job where she could work from home and live in her little flat and be completely independent and have no need whatsoever of anybody else. That
mm,
was her plan. She never planned to get married, but that happened along the way. And she thought Brian was a bit of a kindred spirit because they had the same sort of very practical approach to the world until, Brian changed his mind. So anyway, home she comes, and she's going to have to learn how to live with her very flamboyant mother, Rita. Rita is an artist, and she's also a recovering alcoholic. And you were talking about the get well sooners there. So Rita, following a tragic incident in Marianne and Rita's family history, Rita gave up drinking. She was an alcoholic, she and her husband. And they were those kind of alcoholics, they were very much in the art world. So they threw lavish and fun and adventurous parties at the house in Ankara. And so they sort of neglected the children, but only in a sort of a benign type of a way.
mm,
There's no malice
yeah.
in Rita, and they just forgot to feed them, or bring them to school, or collect them from their school tour, or whatever, that kind of upbringing. So Marianne was always kind of felt like she had a younger sister, Flo, and she always felt like she was the parent in the relationship. And so she returns home to Rita and very unhappy about it. And Rita from the house conducts these get well soon meetings, and because Rita, when she gave up drinking, she did go to AA, but she realized very quickly it was not for her, and it was way too restrictive for her flamboyant nature. So she set up this I suppose, society called Get Well Soon. And so she kind of picks up waifs and strays from around the area who may be in need of her services. She brings them, she drives them to her home and conducts daily meetings with them. So it's into this sort of, foray of noise and colour in walks Marianne, and she's going to have to learn to come to terms with everything that's happened to her. And really, I suppose with Marianne, it's a case of arrested development. She hasn't really allowed life to inhabit her in any kind of a normal sort of a sense. And she's always felt like she's in control of everything. She's harbored that very false illusion that she's in control of everything. So when her cards come tumbling down, she's to return home. So she's kind of starting from, zero again, learning how to be in the world,
Mhm.
and realizing and accepting that there's no controlling anything. You just have to go with it and hold on for dear life.
But she did go the opposite, I guess, the way she was brought up. It was like it was quite chaotic and artistic. Then she went to more like because her relationship with Brian was very formal and very practical, and there was no real emotion or love there, like because that was too again, you can't control that, so you have to eliminate that. So she was going back to what I found quite sad though was that she didn't really get leave her guard down around her mother until the very end when
Yeah.
I don't know what I should say that it'll ruin the ending, but it was kind of a reflection on life that I found it quite uh poignant that it has hard things have to happen for us to drop our guard and get to know somebody.
Yeah.
I would prefer if we could actually be in a space where you can just get to know people,
I
like instead of
know.
something having to happen.
It would be so much easier, like if we were all, when you start school and you're a junior infant and a senior infant, and you just say, "Hi, I'm Dennis.
Yeah.
I like, I like skipping and marbles. What's your name?" And you just become friends immediately, with the kid who happens to be sitting next to you, and you just let it all out because you haven't learned yet to put up that guard. And I love watching kids that age playing because it's just so refreshing. And I do wish that, I mean, it wouldn't it be nice if we could just
But
be
then
like that?
the other thing in the book that I found was that the people in the Get Well Sooners there, they were facing their addictions, they were facing their problems, and Freddie as well. I think he came out towards the end as well,
Yeah,
and it kind of helped me to understand that when people are genuine and genuinely facing their problems, it gives that environment that creates like people can be themselves more often. So that's the other outlet you can get to rather than having to wait for something catastrophic to happen and
yeah.
get to
And
know people then.
I find like because they were sort of in a tribe together and they were facing their problems together,
Mm,
that really, that sense of community is what you get, say, if you go to AA, and it's what you get if you go to get Rita's Get Well Soon, if they indeed existed.
mm,
And I wish they did, actually,
yeah.
because they're a lot of fun. But I think that sense of community does really allow people to, it's like me becoming a writer. You see that you're not alone, and like all the Get Well Sooners see that they are not alone, and that other people have the exact same problems that they're having. It might manifest itself in different ways in different people's lives, but the crux of the matter is the same. And there's such strength in that. There's such comfort in knowing that you're not alone. With your problems, because when you do have a massive big problem, and you don't talk to anyone about it and you don't reveal your vulnerabilities, so you're just there by yourself, and you build it up in your head until it's almost insurmountable. Whereas if you actually are brave enough to come into Rita's Get Well Soon scenario and admit what it is you're fearing or that you're facing in your life, and people will say, "Oh yeah, I feel the same, yeah, that happened to me too," and then the relief is just palpable and it's just so comforting. And I think that's what the book explores, and it's this sense of community and this sort of tribe mentality as well,
Mm,
that Marianne is just hates the idea of that, because she very much is an island and she thinks she's incredibly happy as an island. But of course, over the course of the book, and it can't just be sudden, it has to be very gradual over the course of the book, she will realize that there's something to be said for this sense of community and for having this connection with people in your life. And it makes your life so much more meaningful. And so, yes, it does take her a long time to, I suppose, forgive Rita as well, because she blames her for a lot of things that happened in her childhood, some of which were utterly horrific and unforgivable. Um, but Rita, she never shies away from that. She knows that she's not been a good mother at times. But what she's done is she has drawn a line in the sand and stepped over it and said, now I'm going to try and be a better person. And I'm moving forward. I'm choosing to continue to live, but I'm going to try and do it in a different way. And so I think Rita's story is very hopeful, you know, and I think it's that Marianne will eventually persuade Marianne, that her mother and her can possibly be friends after all the years that have passed.
yeah, a big thing I got from the book was the resentment she had, but she never really brought awareness to it because she never really talked about it, never really acknowledged it. The resentment she had for Rita and what was the son again? What was this adopted son they had?
Oh, Patrick, that's the
Patrick,
foster
yeah.
brother.
That
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah,
that blocked the connection from the two of them, that
yeah.
resentment she had for the past. I quite like the ending when they kind of got to know each other. It was because it wasn't so black and white, it was like there was a level of what I got now was like a level of sadness for the past, but then I also the level of admiration that Rita could like move on. and not be
Yeah.
this person that just goes around as like being depressed and not actually having any impact on other people anymore.
Yeah. And I think Rita does. She does have a hugely positive impact on other people, and she's able to be a terrible mother as well. Because I just think, we're not one thing or another. We're just a
Mm,
very complex, set of cells, and sometimes you can't just define yourself by one moment that happens in your life. And we are lots of things to lots of people. And I think it's actually the way Marianne will, when she comes home to Ankara, much against her will, but she will see Rita through other people's eyes,
yeah.
and not just through her own sense of history, of their shared history together. She will see the impact that Rita has on lots of other people, and she'll see how positive Rita's influence can be, and this will help to change her mind, and to kind of just move her forward a bit. And it's the same with her foster brother, Patrick, because what happened was, when Rita, so a terrible incident happens in Marianne's childhood. When she's 15, Marianne leaves to go to boarding school. After this, Rita gives up drinking completely, and she starts fostering kids. Now, most of them just stay for, like, there's a weekend here, a week there, a summer there. Patrick is the one who stays. He's only supposed to stay for a couple of weeks, but he never leaves. So when Marianne returns to Ankara, Patrick is still there. And Patrick's relationship with Rita is very joyful and very beautiful to behold. And so Marianne completely resents him, because basically Patrick has received the benefit of Rita's maternal instincts in a way that Marianne never did, because Rita was too busy partying and drinking, and just being careless with her children. And so, yeah, Marianne really, really resents Patrick, as well as the Get Well Sooners, because they're all being showered with attention in a way that Marianne never was. And they all have a really different image of Rita to Marianne. So none of them will agree with her, you know, her opinion of her mother. They have a completely different opinion, because they know a completely different version
Mm,
of Rita than Marianne does.
yeah. It's the other thing that I like, found afterwards was that because you didn't get to know Rita's upbringing, you're like, why was she that way? Why was she drunk to begin with? There's obviously stuff there for her that she was running away from. I suppose you never fully get a background in her upbringing that would give you a bit more understanding and empathy towards like why she was in that situation and kind of what patterns I guess have changed from her changing as a
Yeah.
person as well, you know.
Yeah, I mean, her parents were Archibald and Ruby, and they were writers and illustrators as well. They wrote a series of get well, or how to books, how to do really ridiculous things, like, darning and I don't know,
Oh, they made their money off that, wasn't it?
and that's how they made the family money.
Yeah.
And then I suppose, with Rita and her being an artist, and there is that absolute, very acceptable link between being an artist and
Yeah.
being a drinker as well. So Rita totally leans into that. And then her husband, he's an artist as well, and quite a successful one, or at least he was. He had one successful painting, and he sort of lived off the reputation of that, for the rest of his you know working life. But he was a big drinker as well, and then they just had the parties, and it was just kind of that world, that sort of socialite world of parties and art, and it was very acceptable and very glamorous, but in the end of the day, I suppose, like, it had gotten a good hold of Rita. And then, as I say, I don't want to say too much, but there's
Mm.
this incident in Marianne's childhood, and something terrible happens. And I suppose Rita takes stock, and, hilarious, not hilariously, but tellingly, um, Rita gives up drinking. Her husband does not, but he leaves her fairly soon afterwards, because Rita is no longer the socialite, party animal that he, fell in love with. And even though their relationship was pretty catastrophic, because it was, they would have described it as being very passionate, and was always like, they were always chasing each other down corridors and fighting, but then making up and being all incredibly dramatic, which doesn't, for the child that Marianne was, doesn't give her the
Stability.
sense of security that she
Mm.
absolutely craved. So they weren't great for each other, but and they completely weren't suited for each other, because the minute Rita gives up drinking, her husband turns around and off he goes, because that kind of sobriety is not for him. So God, I can't remember what you asked me now in the first place.
Oh, it's about her parents. That's how we
Oh
got
yes,
started.
that's a
Yeah.
very brief
Yeah.
backstory of Rita.
It's
Yeah,
actually like because what you're talking about there also it makes sense in terms of attachment styles in relationships that oftentimes you'll attract somebody who's there to help you heal aspects of yourself that you don't know need to be healed. Have you like researched into that to help you with creating storylines that
no, I
make
mean, I
sense on that
haven't
level?
really. I suppose most of my research is, well, not most of it, but a lot of it is often based on my experience of meeting people,
Okay.
knowing
Yeah.
people, hearing about people, reading about people, and just studying people. I'm a bit of an amateur anthropologist, really, I suppose.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Like if you observe like relationship dynamics and
Yeah.
people gives you insights, which is good because it helps you like as a reader then to read things that might actually make sense of your life in some way that like you wouldn't expect.
Well, that's the hope.
Yeah. No, no, I definitely got that from that book and as well as from Rules of the Road as well. That's a different story, but again, it deals with topics that are challenging. And the biggest lesson I suppose I got from that book was that for Terry's character was that she had a certain idea of how Iris should go about her life, which wasn't Iris's truth. Even though it's difficult, it's better to try and understand where that person's coming from, understand
Yeah.
their rationality, and not try and persuade them of doing things that might seem on the surface like in their best interest, but aren't actually in their best interest.
Yeah, and that's hard, and that's
Yeah,
love. That is love, is accepting somebody's decision, even if you absolutely do not agree
I
with
agree with
it.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it was a good book. Actually, how do the characters come to you? Is it character development or like this?
Yeah, like I'm just thinking about my work in progress at the moment. So my main character is Agatha Doyle, and she definitely came first before the plot. The plot is certainly, arranged around her. So,
Would the
and I think
topic,
mostly, sorry, Dennis, what did you say?
or was just like, would the topic come before the characters in the plot? Like, as in, like, would you want to explore, for example, addiction and mother-daughtership relationship there in the last book, or
No,
no?
absolutely not really. I'm definitely not an issue-driven writer.
Okay.
And sometimes I don't like that as a reader, when I know that this is about an issue and I'm supposed to learn stuff from this, and
Mm,
um I'm being told things, and I'm being given a message, and I'm not mad about that as a reader. At least I like it to be a little bit more subtle. So I definitely don't say, now I'm going to discuss euthanasia in my next novel. It's more, I'm about the character, and I suppose the topic of euthanasia is something that really interests me, because I just think, my God, how brave do you
mm,
have to be to make that decision and then go and do it? Because there is a no way that I would be able to do that. No way. I can't even get a tattoo. I'm a fearful person, and I have nothing but respect for people who make that decision and go for it, which is the decision that Iris has made in Rules of the Road. And yet, Terry is going to have to learn to accept that. And she thinks she is doing Iris a favor by trying to persuade her to change her mind. But she will learn, because Terry is on a journey, like, and Terry's journey is the one that interested me really in this book, because she's the housewife, she's the stay-at-home mother to two daughters who no longer stay at home. She's kind of at a loose end. She finds herself in her 40s without really knowing herself, or having discovered who she is. So her as a character would have interested me. And Iris is a character, someone who she's just a woman who knows exactly what she wants and knows how to go and get it, and doesn't apologize for herself in any way, doesn't compromise, takes no prisoners, and is very, very unlike me in many, many, most ways. And so I suppose a character like that does it fascinate me and interests me. And I think how does someone like that work, and that's where I come from. I think that's where I start from, really.
So the
Um,
character traits, and then the plot evolves from the character traits.
yes, yeah. And it's kind of hard to look back and remember, where did I come up with the plot for Rules of the Road?
Mm.
Um, because I don't know. There's
Was there a
something
reason
about
for journeying through Europe and stopping in France and stuff, or is that random?
that was so nice. I actually
Mm.
no, I had planned that was going to happen in the novel, and then in real life, I went and did that
Oh,
journey. So that was fabulous,
yeah,
really, really good. Yeah, I would highly recommend that. But obviously, that was way before COVID,
yeah.
and just uh, did the thing to travel that it did, which was really mean.
That's nice. Yeah. Uh, Gee, I thought I had a question there for a second. Um, no, the question there a second ago, but it's gone again, I think. Goes of the road.
It'll come back to you at about 4 o'clock tomorrow morning. You'll sit bolt upright in bed and go, ah. So obviously, if that happens, just call me anytime, night and day.
Potentially, yeah. Would you have any advice for somebody listening in who knows there's something lacking from their life, but they don't know what? Like, what would be your advice for them to progress with that and not ignore it?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good realization to come to,
Hmm.
because loads of people just keep on going.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might mention it or they might acknowledge it and then just forget about it, not pursue it
Yeah,
any further.
yeah, so I actually think it's a really positive thing to
Yeah.
happen to you, to realize, oh, hang on, there's something missing in my life, because then you can actually do something about it, you know, and that's incredibly empowering, because like when I realized there's something missing in my life and I was 34, and then I realized what it was, and I started writing. It was, I mean, I describe it as one of the happiest times in my life. I didn't tell anybody I was writing, because I did feel like a big, I had the imposter syndrome real bad. I kind of did have that. Who do you think you are? You're going to be a writer now? What? Like, you can't call yourself a writer. I had so many excuses and reasons in my head as to why I couldn't do it, but yet I I kept on doing it. So I would, by day, like, going around in my suit in the city and being an insurance loss adjuster, and then coming home and making dinner and bathing my kids and putting them to bed. And then once the house was quiet and dark by night, writing at the kitchen table. It almost felt like, sort of revolutionary in a way. And then hugging that secret to myself. I literally did not tell anybody. My husband knew, my sister knew. Other than that, nobody in my life, none of my friends and my wider family knew what I was doing. I mean, it felt that subversive, really.
It's quite
And,
similar for me too.
but you know what? It was like, it was just a really, really happy time of my life. I look back on that time, and it was a delight. And it was because I had, realized there's something missing in my life, and then worked out what it was and gone and done something about it. And the feeling was very empowering. So that's what I would advise people to do, to spend some time. I think, like, we're always talking about, making friends, and finding out, about other people, and getting to know other people, and joining things. But really, a lot of us neglect to get to know ourselves. And I think that's really, really important. And you should invest in yourself and spend some quality time with yourself, and ask yourself some questions about what is it that makes you happy.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you actually, what were some of the intangible things that writing gave you that were the things that were missing? Because I feel like when we feel like we're missing something, it's intangible stuff we're missing. Like for me, for example, writing has helped me to express myself better. It's improved the quality of my relationships. It's helped me to view the world differently. It's given me more empathy for other people, put myself in their shoes a bit more often. Like for you, what sort of intangible stuff did you get from writing that filled the gap from when you
I
asked
mean,
yourself that question?
like what you've just said there, I mean, that's just amazing. That list that you have just, said. I mean, all of those things that writing gave you, that's such a wealth of things. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
It's brilliant. And I feel exactly the same about writing, and that's what it's given me. And I suppose a sense of self-esteem as well, which I was definitely missing. And because it also, when you kind of fall into jobs and stuff, and you don't particularly feel good at any of them. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
You just
Yeah.
think, oh look, this is grand, I'll do this, and this pays the bill, and nobody seems to have noticed that I'm not very good at my job, so this is all good.
Mm.
And obviously my low self-esteem, fed into that narrative as well. But then when I started writing, like for the first time in my life, I actually thought to myself, without being told by anybody, I'm good at this. And that was okay to think that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was a revelation. I just thought, oh my God, am I allowed to say that out loud?
Yeah.
And that was, that. So writing definitely gave me some sense of self and empowerment, and definitely increased my self esteem.
Yeah,
It's
that's good. Yeah.
all good things. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there are all the things. Yeah. Where would people find you online if they wanted to check out your work and your books?
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm actually doing a refurbishment of my website at the moment, so that should be going live. I'm hoping this week. So that's www.ciarageraty.com. But you can find me on Twitter at Ciara Gerathy, and you can find me on Facebook, Ciara Gerathy Books. And I'm also on Instagram, mostly photographs of my mad dog.
That's nice. That's good.
Gabby.
Important too. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Ciara. Thanks for sharing your insights
It's been
around
an
writing
absolute
and
pleasure
your
talking to
journeys.
you as well, Dennis. Thank
Right.
you for inviting me.
Cool. So until next time, have fun and enjoy the process.